Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi there. Welcome to this. I'm excited. Welcome to this, the 50th episode of A Couple Takes on MS. Hi, this is Dan Digman.
And hi, it's me, Jennifer Digman, Dan's wife.
50 episodes, babe.
50 episodes. And yeah, that's pretty huge. September, October, well, it's October now. But September was a pretty big month. We celebrated our 13th anniversary. Dan celebrated his birthday. And now here at the beginning of the month of October, we're celebrating our 50th episode of our radio show.
And just quick background, if you haven't caught us in the last 49 episodes, but I have relapsing remitting MS. I've had it for about 19 years. And Jennifer...
I am living with secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed almost 21 years ago. Boy, 21 years.
21 years. And so what we're talking about today, coming at the subject of this multiple sclerosis from two different perspectives, thereby then a couple takes on MS, and we are married and been, as Jennifer said, celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary last month. But what we're talking about today truly is a mixed bag of MS, because there's so many different things to talk about here, because Jennifer said it was a busy month in September, but I think there's a lot that went down just within last week. And here's a big thing for all of us in the MS community of what happened in Washington, D.C., and has absolutely nothing to do with Supreme Court justice hearings.
No, this is pretty exciting, because President Trump signed a spending bill that allows funding for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for the National Neurological Conditions Surveillance System. So basically, I kind of monkeyed up saying that, but this was a piece of legislation backed by the National Multiple Sclerosis Society and the Michael J. Fox, I want to get this right, the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. It's a bill that will gather data on neurological diseases and provide important information for researchers to search for clues toward a cure. Yes, would you say that's pretty fair, Dan?
Well, I'd say it's very fair, and what's so awesome about this is something in past radio shows that we've talked about a lot, that we've done with advocacy work in D.C., so a lot of MS activists, a lot of other activists from other organizations, just pushing our legislators to provide funding for this. Surveillance is kind of a harsh word.
It sounds very like Big Brother is watching you. But the Surveillance Act, or basically what the information they're trying to gather, is information about those of us living with neurologic conditions. Because currently at this time, more than 100 million Americans live with neurologic conditions, which is almost 1/3 of the U.S. population. Yet there's not a lot of statistics, a lot of information about those of us that are living with these conditions. And if there's information, it's outdated, and we need some credible, current information. And that's what this piece of legislation is supposed to help gather. The demographic, excuse me, my voice was a little weak there, but the demographic data collected by this new system holds potential to accelerate research and allow more analysis of the conditions and diseases that we're living with. And hopefully, there's 100 million Americans living with some sort of neurologic condition. And I think that there's got to be so many demographic things or patterns that they could establish.
And without this, I mean, there was no way to track this kind of data. And I know when we first brought this up to our support group, there were several members of our group who were concerned about this in terms of levels of privacy and everything. And it's like, it's not a question of privacy. They don't want to know names or things. They just want specific cases so that they can better navigate and figure out, okay, well, where are the pockets? Where's the higher concentrations of this disease, that disease? And obviously we have a vested interest in the multiple sclerosis. And so I think this is a good case in point of what continued advocacy and pushing and encouraging your legislators to take action on these things, because we actually had gone twice to Washington, D.C. and written letters to our legislators to pass for funding for this surveillance.
And this was part of the 21st Century Cures Act, which went in front of the legislators in 2016. And it's 2018 and the piece of legislation passed, which is incredible. But what's so wonderful about it is instead of everyone being kind of like, oh no, I've got MS, and we work on our own, we work together with the Michael J. Fox, Parkinson's, and
just other organizations.
And that working together really helped to get this legislation passed. And I'm hopeful. I think it's promising that they're going to be able to look at gender and demographics, like where you live in the country and age, and it's just going to give researchers so much more information, comprehensive information.
Well, and that's where, a lot of these things, when you and I were first diagnosed with MS, I mean, you were late 1990s, I was right there in 2000, but a lot of the information, at that point in time, they were saying what was it, how many, 200,000
Yeah, it was
Americans.
200,000. It was a really small.
And a lot of when we're talking research and all these other things, they were basing a lot of that stuff on data that was gathered in the 70s.
Yeah, before either of us was born, or at the time we were born, and that information was old, which is not to say that old things don't provide some good information, but that's why this current and more just current and accurate information is going to be really wonderful. So I think we're both pretty excited about this because, as you said, this is something we've advocated for, and the MS Society has really pushed hard. And so we want to thank President Trump for signing this legislation, and just keep your eye on it. And if you're listening to Dan and I right now, and you're not involved with advocacy with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, it's really easy to do. You can hop on the internet and search for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society and look for ways you can get involved. It's easy as sending letters or action alerts, or taking the opportunity to go meet your legislators in person, whether it be at your state capital or the country's. Go to Washington, D.C., legislate at the Capitol there. I mean, just get involved because it's very empowering. And I think if we had a dollar for all the times we talk about how good it feels to get your voice heard and to share your story, because that's really all you have to do for advocacy, is share your story, or
share your story, the why it's important, and
what you're looking for, and what this disease has done to you or your care partner or someone that you love. Legislators need to hear how multiple sclerosis impacts us.
So I would say with that, the National MS Society's website is nmss.org. Go there and look for action alert and opportunities to get involved with advocacy. But look too in their news section, because they'll have the full story on this incredible legislation that was passed last week on the
The
28th.
yeah.
And so check that out. And carrying on then, as we're talking about the mixed bag of MS, speaking of advocacy and everything like that, you're looking into something, you're closer to something pretty big here, love. Talk to me.
I'm really happy. Sorry if you couldn't understand me. I'm really happy because I potentially am going to get a new power wheelchair. I am no longer walking, and I want to credit my multiple sclerosis.
Good job, MS.
Yeah, thank you for taking away my
Sure.
legs. Jerks, exactly. But I have not been able to walk on my own for about 16 years. And I have this beautiful power chair right now, but I've had it for 7 years, which is kind of a long time, and it's showing its age. I turn it on quite often, and I get an engine or a
Drive lockout.
Drive lockout where I can't move. Like this morning, I was sitting in the kitchen, and despite turning the chair off and on and off and on and raising it and lowering it and raising it and lowering it, I had to sit for 30 minutes before my chair would move on its own, which is frustrating, and again, it's showing its age. So I've met with some, what would you say, like,
Well, a mobility company.
yes, thank you. Mobility company that is going to help me get my new wheels. And a wheelchair is not just a wheelchair.
Not all wheelchairs are created equal.
Very nice, Dan Digman.
I write for a living.
Yeah, speak the truth. But my wheelchair, speaking from my perspective, is it's a piece of complex rehabilitative technology, because a normal wheelchair is what I was sitting in when I first lost the ability to walk. And I was sitting in it, and I was sitting in it, and I was very uncomfortable. And sure enough, come to find out, I had developed a pressure sore because I can no longer really move or stand up on my own. And I didn't realize how important it was to alleviate pressure off, your butt. Let's be honest, speak the truth here. And so when I met with a physical therapist, and this was back about 8 years ago, she told me about a chair that would tilt in space and help me to alleviate pressure. And so then I got that chair, my Grape Ape. You can look on her website and see photos of said Grape Ape chair. And I got that, and the chair really helped me to relieve pressure. But now, as I said, it's been 7 years, and I need a new cushion, and my chair is difficult to run all the time. So I am potentially getting a new chair.
And that all was in, well, not all of it, but in part to other advocacy work from people, and we were involved in that with the complex rehabilitative technology to encourage Congress to pass legislation so they allow for the funding for this kind of technology and chairs for people who need it, because again, not all wheelchairs are created equal, and so they needed to provide that funding. They couldn't have just a blanket standard for
like
things.
Everyone, like all wheelchairs are built the same.
Yeah.
And they're not, because for me, like, I need to tilt in space. My new chair that I will be getting, hopefully, will be able to raise my legs, because I can no longer raise them on my own, and they have a little bit of edema, which is like swelling, and that will help to raise them and get that swelling down. Anything to be proactive to keep my body as healthy as possible, and I think a wheelchair will do that for me. And I was a little concerned, this is totally cosmetic and just kind of silly on my part, but the vendor who is helping me get my new chair, we had talked about getting an orange chair, orange being the color for multiple sclerosis. And I was all in, and I was like, yes, I'm so excited. And then I think it was last night you and I were sitting around, and I'm like, I don't know if I want an orange chair, because let's be honest, I'm not a big fan of multiple sclerosis. And I feel like if I have an orange chair, I'm advertising, or I'm saying it's okay, it's just an accessory, just orange. But I don't know. I mean, what do you I mean, I don't know, out there, do you think I'm being silly that I don't want this beautiful chair that I'm going to be in 90% of my day? I don't want it to be orange, like screaming multiple sclerosis, multiple sclerosis.
Is that something, and this is where we get into the discussion of invisible versus visible illness. It's like, obviously the wheelchair, people notice, that's just
That's just the reality. It's a big chair. It's like a 400-pound
it's a
machine.
huge chair. And so then, would having the big orange on it kind of, I don't know, now we're just talking, but like hunters, in the woods, they wear their bright orange sweatshirts so hunters can see them so they don't get shot. So it's just like, all of a sudden you're no longer just a subtle wheelchair. Does that just scream, look at me, I'm orange, and
look at me, look at me? Or
does that help in a sense too, that if you're driving around in an orange wheelchair, if you saw somebody driving with an orange wheelchair, you right away would think multiple sclerosis, and all of a sudden you have a new best friend.
But it's, I guess, I don't know, you sometimes want to hide with your disability,
And that's where we have that discussion about
I just want to blend in. Sometimes I hate being like I stick out like a sore thumb, where it's just like I can never sneak anywhere because my chair is noisy or it's big, and my days of making a subtle entrance are gone and have been gone for a number of years. And I think you're right. If it was orange, I would feel like I was screaming multiple sclerosis, look at me, look at me. And I'm sure it's not going to be that obnoxious or that visible, but in my head, I'm like, let's be a little subtle. Let's go gray, or let's just go black and add a little pop of color with some orange accents. But I don't know. Again, I have to decide if I'm going to get this new chair, which I pray to God I will get because it'll be really good. But do I want it to be screaming orange?
And what a great problem to have, that because if there was a fear that you wouldn't get a chair, and you'd say, I'd give anything, I'd even get an orange chair. It's just like,
that's a good point. But then, I think what a difference this disease has made in my life, because 20 years ago I wanted a car that potentially was convertible, or did I want a truck, or did I want, I wanted a car that I'd be able to drive. And now my choice is a wheelchair, and I'm just like, oh, I want it to be pretty and I don't want it to be too bright. And it's just like how the disease has changed my idea of transportation. And this new chair will be pretty awesome because it'll have the tie downs that you need if you're getting in a vehicle automatically right there on the chair. And it's like so smart. And like I said, it'll have the legs that will elevate. So maybe I am being silly worrying about the color. Just be thankful and happy that you have a chair.
Or is that where it's fortunate, like through the advocacy or legislation for complex rehabilitative technology, you have all that, everything you need is in place, and it comes standard, so to speak, so you don't have to worry about those things, that you can stew and kvetch on what the color of the chair will be because you're already taken care of for what you need.
That's a really good point. Yeah, well, get back to me or we will get back to you if you I want to
Yeah,
hear.
chime in. What would you say as far as color of a wheelchair, and is it a big deal or is it not a big deal? Just follow us on Twitter's at DanJenDig, or just log into our website and send us an email there. It's danandjenniferdigman.com. Just to let us know your take on wheelchairs and accessorizing and
Well,
colors.
I mean, just multiple sclerosis in general. If you're using a walker or if you're using a cane, or if you want to keep any of that mobility equipment out of sight, out of mind, you want to be subtle about your disease, or you're at that point where you're like, forget being subtle. This is me. I have MS and I want everyone to know. I mean, really, what is your take? Because sometimes I think that I'm just going to talk about the disease forever, and just because it's a huge part of my life, and I know it's a big part of yours, babe, that we're just going to talk about it and share our stories. But then there are days where, and I'm sure we all have those days where you're just like, I want to clam up in a ball and not have to talk about MS, not have to be a poster child for living with the disease.
Just like you just want a day, you just want to be you, and then that always is the question of, in just being you, is the MS part of who you are? I mean,
Well, and that's a good question, considering how long we both have had multiple sclerosis.
well, and I think that was the other thing, and not to just transition from that, but I make this last month, like just last week,
Yeah.
I celebrated celebrated my 46th birthday.
Woo woo.
Yeah, 46 years. And so, and it dawned on me that at 46 years old,
46 years young. Thank you very much.
having 46 years on my driver's license, but it's just reality that being said, I have lived half of my life in Michigan. Grew up in Iowa, moved out to Michigan when I was 23. So half of my life has been in Michigan.
Right.
So, and I'm not here to talk about where I lived, but it's just the reality that I was thinking, okay, so how long then will it be until I will say that I've lived half of my life with multiple sclerosis? I was diagnosed when I was 27, so math would tell me that I have to live until I'm 54
Right.
to have half of my life. And so, but then I'm looking at you, love of my life, there you
Yes.
are. And you, I mean, for you to say half of your life with MS is going to be when you turn 46, my age. So
Yes.
you've got a couple more years to where you can say you've lived half of your life with multiple sclerosis. And as you and I were talking, I could see, I know that over half of my adult life has been with multiple sclerosis. And I say, well, we can't, if you take away like your infant years and everything where you're not fully conscious of, yourself or age and realities and stuff,
Right.
you just think, and these are real things, that it's just like, yeah, over half of my adult life has been living with this disease. And so then it's just like, when does it become too much, or when do we start, I don't want to say accepting, but it's just like we're always longing for the days of what once was. But then I'm just like, I don't know if I really had in my adult life a life of something that wasn't multiple sclerosis.
Yeah,
Not being, this isn't like a woe is me or anything, but it's just the reality of just how quickly time flies, and just like more and more emphasizes why for me, I just got to live each day and enjoy the hell out of it, and not worry about things, not long for other days, because on some levels this is all I've ever known.
right.
And so maybe that's why I don't want to say I'm happy all the time, but it's just like this is the reality I have.
Well, and to be honest, and I hate the diseases.
Well, I'm not in love with it.
Well, I understand. But, as I said, I don't want to scream multiple sclerosis in a big orange chair. And I don't want to be like, woo, look at me, I love MS. But if it wasn't for multiple sclerosis, I never would have met you. and that would be sad, and I never would have met some of my nearest and dearest friends, and I don't think I would appreciate life the way I do. And I think anytime you and I have the opportunity to talk with other people living with the disease, they feel the same way, that as crappy as MS may be, it really helped focus life and priorities. So for me, it's gonna, when I turn 46, that'll be half of my life. But I can't, like, when I think back to life before MS, I don't really know if it was all that meaningful. I mean, I had some good friends and I had a lot of good times, but I don't know that my life made as much of an impact as I would like to believe it does now. And I think, again, that the MS really put it in priority, or put it into focus, not into priority, put it into focus.
And that's where it's like we don't necessarily credit and celebrate the disease, because truly it's on your action and how you deal with it that made you make the impact and everything. Because I don't give the disease more credit than it deserves, but this is where we are. And so I just, like you say, it was just one of those realities that it's just like, this is our life, this is what we do. And I mean, and obviously, if it weren't for multiple sclerosis, we wouldn't be sharing our stories with you out there, the listeners. And I mean, what do you think? I mean, as far as like you in listener land, how big of an impact has MS had in your life, and in terms of like the time that you've lived with it, and
how has the disease changed you? Has it been for better or worse? And I think that's very interesting. And I would be remiss if I didn't say hi to my brother Steve, because he really helped us with some show topic today, some things to talk about. Because Steve and I were talking earlier today, and that's one of those relationships that the MS helped me realize was really important and get into focus. So hi, baby brother. That's all.
And so, but thank you all for taking the time to listen to us here on A Couple Takes on MS. And thank you for celebrating our 50th episode with listening to our mixed bag of MS. Check us out online on our website at danandjenniferdigman.com, or check us on Twitter at danjendig. And we appreciate you listening, and thanks again to Blue Giraffe Kid for composing the theme music for our show, and thanks to the MS&Me Radio Network for having us along. Take care.